Welcome back to the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today, our guest is Michele Burns, the president of Lower Merion Soccer Club, LMSC. Michele, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. Really exciting to have you on the show. What brought me to starting Sports Business Leaders with Justin was a youth sports startup in the area. Southeastern Pennsylvania. We always talked about LMSC, and as I've come to learn more about the organization, shout out to Rich Young for bringing you into the group and encouraging you to attend some of our events. It was really only then, after Richie was telling us about you, that I learned more about the history of the club, how many championships you guys have won, some of your ethos and things like that. So really excited to talk to you today. For those of you who have never heard of LMSC, it's a nonprofit that serves 2,700 young players in the suburban Philadelphia area since 1968. From 2-year-olds in the Little All-Stars all the way up to the U19 travel teams, LMSC has earned multiple state championships and nearly 300 former alumni, or I guess alumni of LMSC, have gone on to play at the college level. Michele took the helm about a year and a half ago. Again, Michele, welcome. Really excited to have you on the show. Before we talk a little bit more about LMSC and some of the things going on in the youth sport marketplace, love to hear a little bit more about you, your background. What were you up to before taking the helm in the presidential role at LMSC?
So my start in soccer, I was the parent. I started as the parent on the sidelines and evolved into parent manager club level, parent ambassador high school level. I think they called me team representative at the college level. Just always interested and involved with the operational side of youth soccer up into the collegiate level. One thing I never was a coach. This was not my sport, and I will never attempt to be. Somebody gets red carded, I might be able to handle it, but that's about it. After doing all that, my son, who still plays, I just felt like I couldn't get the bug for youth soccer out of me. And I moved into administration and operations at a club level locally, moved on to the state level, worked at EPYSA, and then moved into working in the management side, sports management side of soccer, primarily operationally with a company. And now here I am. Lower Merion was looking to make a change and asked if I'd talk to them and be interested in the role. And as soon as I had that conversation, I knew I was. And that's where I am today.
It's really exciting. I mean, quite an undertaking. Again, almost 70 years of history, 45 teams, which I didn't mention in the intro, but that's the breadth of the club, along with, as mentioned, the 2,700 players. So congrats again. Again, heard things about LMSC as soon as we just started talking youth soccer. So it's really cool to hear more about the club itself, which is really the second question, which is to, in your own words and experience and, what you know about the club. Love to learn more about LMSC, the history, any sort of more information you can share about the competitiveness, the championships, and sort of what makes LMSC stand out in the marketplace, where there's a lot of youth soccer clubs here in the southeastern Pennsylvania area. Love to hear more about LMSC from you, Michele.
Well, the way we look at it, LMSC has always been rooted in the community. We are a community club. Hasn't changed since the inception in 1968. But I think what has evolved is how we deliver on that mission. The game's definitely become more structured. It's much more competitive and in a lot of ways more complex. What we're doing and seeing today may not be what we're talking about a year from now. So we've adapted to all of that by building a full pathway from intramural straight up to travel. And as you said, our little All-Stars up to U19, we have our development academy in there, investing in coaching, creating opportunities for player development with other programming, special programming. But through all of that, core has stayed the same. We're here for our families. We're accessible. We're focused on development over our egos. So the evolution has been about meeting the moment without losing who we believe we are.
Yeah, it's incredible. And we've talked quite a bit about different aspects that we just learned at the Buying Sandlot conference, which is really the biggest youth sports business conference in the nation, which is brand new. Shout out to Kyle Scott again. And there were people like Rush Soccer was there, the biggest soccer club in the nation.
Mhm.
We're friends with Justin Miller now, the CEO. Surf Soccer was there, Frontier. And a lot of clubs reflected exactly what you said here, Michele. It's that they focus on the community, focus on developing players, focusing on the families that are involved. We oftentimes talk about private equity in sports and the coaching perspective and like the facilities demand, but like the focus needs to be on these players and these athletes and the community that the clubs have curated around the club. So really love that. Yeah, super good. Anything to add in addition to?
No, we think that as long as we keep doing that and don't forget who and what we are, that we'll continue to be very sustainable as well as have offerings for players of all levels. And we just, we're focused on right now and the short term. And short term for us is maybe the next 3 years with an eye to the long term. So we feel very comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is great. And as we start to talk a little bit more about the ecosystem, I mentioned some of the nationwide players, but again, just right here in southeastern Pennsylvania, there's a lot of clubs. There's a lot of differentiation among them. Some are attached to an MLS team, some are, more only recreational things. You referred to LMSC when you and I were planning out this conversation as a bridge club. And I think it manifests itself in a few different ways. So I'd love to hear more about that perspective about seeing LMSC as a bridge for your players and families.
Sure, I'm happy to share with you what we believe that is for us. I don't know what the term might mean for our region, Eastern Pennsylvania, or what others might for view it as. But for us, we're a club that connects players from one level or environment to a higher one. And that can be within our club. We might take an intramural player and move them into travel, or it can be recognizing that we have a player that needs to find a home for themselves in another club to be able to reach that next level and have that next step in their development. And for us, it also means developing these habits, confidence, and an understanding that these players may eventually need to move into other leagues, other clubs. So, there's a lot of different things around it, but bridge doesn't always mean bridge out. Bridge means to something higher, better, different for us.
Yeah, and to spotlight something you mentioned there, we talked to a lot of youth sport operators, whether they be athletic clubs like LMSC or like development academies, these different things. And something you mentioned, you talked about confidence and establishing better habits. It's really interesting how a lot of the focus from these organizations really isn't on like the ball skills and the X's and O's of the sport. It's really about communication, discipline, confidence. Just seeing when the families see that their players, their young athletes are like walking around differently and more confident, it really shows the impact. So love to have you maybe speak to that, within that bridge lens, if these are things that you guys also pay attention to within LMSC.
Absolutely. We are development focused. Our goal, yes, developing players, but we don't want to just develop players on the pitch. We're helping to develop these human beings to be assets and leaders in the community. Just great people, teammates, friends, students, children. Kids that know how to talk to adults, respect authority. When you have all of that going on and then you have great coaching, those two worlds collide in a really positive way. And to your point, we recognize now that we are putting kids out there that are having an impact in areas that we might not even know about unless somebody brings it to us. And that's really exciting for us. When we hear about something that one of our players might be doing in school or a community project, and to hear any type of reference to, well, my coaches helped me feel more confident about myself, or I was picked captain of the team, and now all of a sudden this child feels leadership qualities. So development isn't just, like you said, tactical. It's tactical. It's the person. We have to develop that whole person. And if we fail in any of those areas, we just feel like we failed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a funny thing too, because a lot of people, when we talk about youth sports, we emphasize this like super competitive attitude on the family side, and we got to have our sons and daughters in the most elite, this and that. And you'd think that everybody wants their young athlete to be a pro player or at least play D1 somewhere. And then you parents, and they will say that's not really it. We just want them to be in the best environment around their best peers and to learn all the best things. So this part that you just talked about, the confidence, communication, discipline, all the non-ball skills and non-pitch things is super important. They may not say it directly. You might have to like pull it out of them, but these families really care about this. Good to hear about this, Michelle. Um,
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about, as we start to come to the finale of the conversation, let's talk about the youth sports market in general, which is
Mm,
out of control. And here at
out
Sports Business Leaders, we are kind of like secular agnostic, meaning we see people in youth sports, sports betting, video broadcast tech, emerging sports and leagues, owning teams, NIL, college, you name it. We kind of know people in all these different sectors. However, youth sports is the biggest, sort of like the most dynamic, the most, I think, historically fragmented, which means it's met with more innovation and disruption lately. And you have, again, player development, recruiting, all the tech, all the management side, the coaching elements. There's like more going on in youth sports than any other sector within the market. We have, again, referencing buying Sandlot, there's a lot of conversations about private equity, consolidations, roll ups. It's a wild landscape. So within that lens, Michelle, I'd love to hear some of the trends that you're following, maybe some of the exciting things that you guys are tracking as LMSC in terms of how dynamic and changing the youth sport market is, maybe some of the things you'd want to see evolve differently, better, anything at all. But your perspective on this market expansion and growth, love to hear more.
Well, I think we all know there's no denying that private investment, can certainly bring structure, resources, facilities, visibility, a lot of really great things to an organization. But when the primary driver becomes financial return, it risks shifting a lot of focus away from what we believe matters most, and that's kids. That's our members, their families, and their long-term development. Without them, we don't exist. I remind our staff all the time, we don't have jobs, we don't exist. So we believe that we need to keep the sport accessible, community driven, rooted in our players' experience, not just the profit margins. So the rising fees, barriers, things like that exclude families, that changes the game for us as a community club. And we have to stay committed to pushing back against that a little bit and figuring out what we need to do to stay true to that mission. So we constantly, I get involved in it as much as I can. For instance, your events. What can I learn from the people, that you are inviting out to these events? I'm involved with a leadership circle with Institute of Youth Sports Leaders, and I'm in those groups. I am part of a client advisory board for our platform. These aren't things for Michele Burns. These are things for Michele Burns as president of Lower Merion Soccer Club to learn from, to collaborate with people, to find out and figure out how we can continue to be the best we can be, but also recognize what we might need to change, what we might need to adapt to. And the game is evolving. We are not that club. We don't have those badges. Will we ever? I don't know. Do we want them? We're not sure. It's easy to say, sure you do, because that pulls players in, but we are not. Our focus is on developing players and finding a home for anybody that wants to play youth soccer and recognizing that not all will fit into our ecosystem and our structure. I think, we have 4 teams in several age groups, which we say, many want to say A, B, C, D. Where do those CD players? Do they go up? Does it take several years? Might we develop them over several years? And then A and B, are we bridging them out, as we've said? So with private equity, sure, you can do a lot more. You can bring the funds in and the resources to expand. But what might we become? What might we risk becoming if we do that? And we have to make sure that we maintain our presence as a community club. That doesn't mean we can't grow. It doesn't mean we can't expand. It doesn't mean we can't evolve into that higher level and have new offerings. And we continue to do that. We started offering clinics on days that schools are closed. So well received. We're partnering with City SC out in California to have opportunities. We have 7 players going out to play in California over the summer with City SC. And we work with them on coaching curriculum, and my DOC, Shane Rainier, is on the national coaching panel with them. So we're doing plenty of things. We're doing a lot to evolve into, I guess, what the soccer world would say is more, providing opportunities to our families. We just may not be doing it on this grand scale or flashy stage or, badge driven. It's all keeping in mind the families, the members, what can we offer them, what will develop them, and what will help us retain them and remain sustainable in the community.
Yeah, this is incredible. You had shared some of these things already, how you invest in leadership skills and go to conferences, and I'm glad to hear the example of you coming to our events and other actual sports and youth sport business industry events to learn more and stay on the bleeding edge. And that's really cool about City SC. Justin and I always say this, but we really learn the most from our friends leading organizations during the podcast because things just come out that are really interesting. And that's awesome. I've never heard of
Shane's
that.
heading out. Shane's heading out to the summit tomorrow out in California.
Okay, that's
Yep.
cool. Yeah, have to try and connect with them. This is great. And I guess we didn't plan for this one, but one small thing that I think will be an easy thing for you to answer. But there are lots of sports companies and innovative solutions to things that are always trying to work with youth sport operators, teams, and leagues. And we had shared a little bit of this about how we're focused on this connection between those entities and then operators like LMSC or teams or leagues. But do you have any advice on if you're a vendor or service provider, anybody who wants to do business with youth club operators like LMSC, any advice on what these leaders should know about approaching you, what they should be saying, some of the things that are important to players like you in the marketplace, Michelle? I'd love to learn a little bit about that.
What's always been really important to me is that when vendors reach out, they know a little bit about us as an organization. I am not a huge fan of blast, the market emails. But when somebody goes out there, knows a little bit, and it's a personalized email, I find that beneficial. I think I mentioned to you the other day, I will talk to anyone. I am not ever married to a vendor, a supplier. I will always want to find what's best for us. So my advice would be authentic in your communication. And to me, authenticity is what I just explained, knowing a little bit about us when you say, hey, I'm reaching out to you, like you're really reaching out to me, not I'm reaching out to you because you and 5,000 other people in this email. The one thing that I guess bugs me a little bit on LinkedIn is when everybody wants to connect with you and message you, and that doesn't feel, because sometimes I look at it, I'm like, look, come on, like I'm looking at my LinkedIn tab, like you really don't have anything to offer me, and I really don't have anything to offer you. So that message doesn't feel authentic. But I would also suggest, if it's possible, I have one example I have is a vendor that I met at the conference and we won something. And it was helpful because it was a subscription to something we just purchased. Never heard from them. Yet I'm getting emails from somebody else from that company wanting to talk to me. And I find that disconnect and not really doing your due diligence when you're reaching out to people. Make sure you look on your back end too. Have we had conversations with these people? Is somebody else already communicating? That just looks sloppy to me. And coming from my background of accounting and operations, I don't do sloppy. So I kind of move on from that. So nice, neat, tidy, authentic, purpose driven, and don't stop communicating. Like there are some people I try my best to communicate with, and even if I'm not right now. I'm sure there are many that are not doing that, but we are very overloaded in what we're doing as well. So I think until you're told to stop communicating, don't stop. Keep reaching
Yeah.
out because you never know when that need arises either.
Oh, yeah, and that's actually something that, for those of you sports entrepreneurs out there need to know, is that that's actually the most valuable piece of information is before you find out that they have a vendor need or might be wanting to switch out a vendor, it's like, what is your annual cycle? When should we be talking? Because it's usually like
Yeah.
a budget cycle, and if you miss it, you have to wait a year, if not more.
Right.
So that's a really good mention, Michelle. Yeah, it's so funny. I'm gonna shout out one of our first sponsors ever where this situation just happened. It's a publicly traded company called Insperity. They do like benefits and all these things. And one of their benefits, HR, 401k, all that stuff, PEO. And you and I had talked a lot about this a little
Yep.
bit, Michelle. But one of the they have all territories, and all those territories report to like one mothership office. It's a publicly traded company. It's thousands of employees. And one of the junior sales reps who I was unfamiliar with sent me a cold message lately. I was like, oh, we've actually done things with you guys in the past. I didn't message Bill Polin, our champion, who was former football coach at my alma mater at Delaware, actually. I didn't even mention the name, but then less than 12 hours later, I get a text from Bill. A team member did the right thing, did exactly what you said, found out that somebody was already talking to us, went back to their team, looked up who was like the account holder, the contact champion, and then that person actually reached back out. So yes, you got to be organized, you got to be buttoned up. I love that you shared that example, Michelle. Some teams are out here doing it properly. This is great. Last question. What's the best way for people in this area or afar, youth sport fans and families? Because again, you guys are connected to California now. How can people follow along with you if they want? And also, more specifically, how can people follow along with the LMSC journey from here?
Oh, we do our best to keep our website updated with all we have going on, and that's lmsc.net. We didn't change it ever. So it's going to have that .net, probably perpetuity. But there's links to everything we do. We're offering, we're social media. We're Instagram, Facebook. I believe our social media coordinator has started with TikTok. We're out there. We're in the community. We want to connect with people. I'm on Instagram as well, Shane Rainier. You'll find us that way. But we love hearing from you. Info@lmsc.net if you have questions, or me personally, Michelle with one L at lmsc.net. I will answer anybody and everybody. I love what we do, and I love being in the space, and I love talking about it and being part of it, being solutions based, problem centric, member centric. This is my joy. This is what I love.
Fantastic. Michele Burns, the president of Lower Merion Soccer Club. Thanks again for joining the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.